All right, Logan, time to catch everybody up on the entirety of the offseason and prepare everybody for training camp in 30 minutes or less. You ready?
Perfect. Love it. Yeah, let's hit it.
All right, so here's how we're going to do this. We're going to go each position group. What do you look for in camp at this group? So like when Logan is watching the drills, when I'm watching the drills, what are we actually watching for quarterbacks, running backs, et cetera, et cetera? 2, position battle to watch at the position. And then number 3, our confidence level in this group. So you get a chance of what we think the strengths and weaknesses of the team are. And we will start with quarterback. What do you look for in camp at the quarterback position, Logan, as Jayden Daniels embarks on his rookie season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're watching individual drills, like how seriously are they taking it? Are they locked in? How's the footwork? How's the release looking? Obviously, Jayden Daniels through minicamp and OTAs did a really good job of that, and I'm expecting him to continue to do that. And then in practice, you mentioned like flow of practice, and I think that's a big role of the quarterback, is just to kind of get guys in and out of the huddle, get the play in, get it executed. If they're in the huddle too long, he's having a hard time with the verbiage. If they're at the line of scrimmage, he's confused. When I got to play with Matt Ryan, like it was crisp. We're in, we're out, plays out. You know what I mean? We're matching Matt's tempo, and I think obviously for a young quarterback, that's going to be somewhat challenging. Kind of to establish that philosophy and perspective, but that's what this is for. And so how does that look? And then again, like, interceptions don't really bother me. Drop passes don't really bother me, but are we following the process? Are my feet good? Am I understanding what the defense, like let me backtrack that. There's a bad interception and there's good interceptions, right? There's
right.
Bad interceptions is when I'm throwing a ball and into coverage and I don't see the coverage as it is presented, right? And there's ones where the defense makes a good play, right? They're different. And I think like that's what I'm looking for, is feet, timing, rhythm, relationships to receivers with the quarterback, and how are we seeing the general defense that's being presented. And I think Jayden, on the whole, did a pretty good job with that. But obviously there were issues in minicamp and OTAs, which is to be expected. But how does that continue to progress, basically, is what I'm keeping an eye on.
For sure. I think there's kind of 2 levels of it. First level is, I actually think back to watching Jayden on tape, and there's just kind of this feeling like, this is what quarterback's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And on some level, training camp starts there for quarterbacks. Is like, is it fluid? Does it look like what it's supposed to look like? Or is it clunky? Is there a lot of, double patting the football? Is there a lot of like weird timing throws where you're just like, that felt awkward and rushed or late or whatever? So there's a general flow and command, ultimately, is what that is for a quarterback. Then there's the like next level stuff where I just poke you in the rib as we watch on the sideline. I was like, what do you make of the read there? Like, what is he actually going through on the progressions? Are his eyes in the right place? And thus, is he executing the play as it's supposed to? If it's supposed to go to the post, does it go to the post? If it's supposed to, if you're supposed to read the left side because it's cover 2, are you reading the left side, or did you get fooled pre-snap? Like, there's the like really high level, or not even high level at that point, quarterback stuff of process. And then there's the kind of thing that I think anybody could see without knowing the concept, without knowing anything, of a fluidity of the position, a command of the position. And so those are the things that I think we look for, certainly that I look for at quarterback.
And it's something we've talked about a lot. It's like, does he look comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like, does he look comfortable? And I think that's like, as a base barrier to entry is important. Like, are your feet settled? Is your body posture okay? Are you flustered by the defense? Do you look confused? Like, those things are things that I think anybody can identify, right? Like, if they're scrambling, like John Keim brings this up all the time, and I remember it because I was playing, but like, Robert scrambling in 7-on-7 is like not great. And so if you're seeing stuff like that a lot, obviously they're not seeing the coverage. They don't know how to anticipate throws well. So those types of things. And again, I expect that all to go really well. But though high level, it's general practice tempo. And then how comfortable do they look in the pocket, right? Footwork,
for sure,
timing, rhythm, those types of things.
All right, number 2, position battle to watch. To me, there's kind of like, I guess, 2 position battles here. You have the starter job, and then you have the third quarterback job. I have a pretty good guess on how all that's going to go, but I guess the question I would ask, Logan, is like, how much does Marcus Mariota's performance matter? Is this all about how good and ready Jayden is, or if Mariota is really good or really bad in camp, does that influence the starting quarterback position?
I mean, it's going to influence it to a certain extent, right? If Mariota looks like he could win you some games and looks very comfortable and, is making plays from the pocket and looks good with the zone read stuff, then you say, we don't have to accelerate Jayden. We can kind of just let him come along as he feels appropriate. But, based on what we saw in the spring, based on what we saw in OTAs, like, I feel like it's going to be, Jalen's job. Like, what I'm saying? It's his job at this point. Like, he's doing such a good job playing the position. He seems to have a master of the offense. Like, and again, Mariota didn't show those other things, I felt. And again, like, the staff might feel differently. So if he does come in as the starter, that's totally fine. But I do think it is relevant. But I also think that, like, just what we've seen from Daniels so far, it's been really impressive. And I think it's like Mariota hasn't shown that that level of play for a couple of years now. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to articulate, but yes, it does matter, but also no, it doesn't, because you want the best person.
I think
to
it
play.
only matters to the extent that Jayden's does. Like, if Marcus is really good, but Jayden's also really good, it's going to be Jayden's job.
Yeah.
If Jayden is like kind of rookie level expectation struggles and Marcus is really good, well then, okay, yeah, maybe. If Marcus is not very good, then you might as well just play Jayden anyway. Who do you think, one word answer? Yeah, I'm doing this to you. One word answer. Who takes the first snap of training camp?
I'm going to say Jayden, I think.
Yeah, Daniels. The other position, or the other end of the depth chart here is Jeff Driscoll versus Sam Hartman. I think that Driscoll is going to wind up being the 3, and the real question is whether or not he winds up on the practice squad as the 3, or whether they actually keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster.
Yeah, I think this one's probably a little bit more compelling, because I think ultimately, like, Jayden's going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy at some point, whether that's week 1 of training camp, whether it's week 2 of the season. Like, that's the expectation, and it should be. He's a second overall pick, right? But I think the more compelling one is, what do they do with the back of this quarterback room with Driscoll and Sam Hartman? Like, does Sam beat Jeff Driscoll out? Is one of them a practice squad guy? Like, how do they do that? Because again, like, that one roster spot has implications for the 5th linebacker, right, for the 7th wide receiver, for the 9th O lineman. So I think that's going to be more compelling, and definitely something that I'm going to be watching probably more acutely, because like I like we just talked about, like, obviously, if Mariota comes out in balls and he's the guy, great, but he's kind of fighting it off an inevitable tide of Daniels winning the job, right? We all expect that to happen. The other two, it's a little bit more in flux, and I think it's a little bit harder to kind of prove definitively that you deserve an opportunity when you're that 3rd and 4th guy. So the preseason games become more important. The joint practices become more important. So in terms of, like, eat your popcorn, watch a position battle, that to me is probably the more interesting of these four guys.
Yeah, I mean, Hartman's definitely practice squad. I think the question is whether you could get Driscoll there, which maybe that winds up being the difference. Is like they try to get both, or one of them, and they just realize Driscoll can't. So yeah, that'll be interesting from the roster standpoint. All right, last question: a confidence level. Let's just go 1 to 10 here. Confidence level that this group will perform well in 2024. 1 to 10 is
6.
It's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's like I feel pretty good about it, but not great. Again, it's a rookie quarterback. He's done all the right things in the offseason, but you need to see him grow and develop versus NFL defenses. So, that confidence level, if they go to Miami and he looks awesome, is going to change a little bit. Then they go to the Jets. It's going to be a little bit more. And then the preseason looks good. I'm going to feel better if Jayden plays better. But again, like, I'm still kind of reserving judgment. That doesn't mean I don't think he's going to be I don't think he's going to be bad. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a good player.
Yeah,
I like
this
the
is
player
2024. This is not long-term prognosis. I agree. 6. Like, I think he could be really good. I think he's probably going to be like pretty solid with some ups and downs. And that's dependent on a couple of other things too that we're going to talk about in terms of the other position groups that support him. It's the first year of a new scheme. So all that stuff goes into it. All right. Next up, let's go to the O-line next. So our 3 key questions. What do you look for in camp at this group? So when you watch an O-line drill, What are you looking for?
Yeah, so obviously every drill is a little bit different, but when you're watching one-on-ones, like do they show a proclivity for pass protection, right? Are they in a good spot? Are they on the line? What's their timing look like on their punch? Are they bringing their feet with them? Are they leaving them behind? Are they bending at the waist? It's a little bit more technically nuanced, which is crazy to say because quarterback's way harder to play. But, like offensive line, there's a huge technical element, kind of like a martial art to it that you're always evaluating. In team drills, you want to make sure that their communication is excellent, right? And that starts with the quarterback, that goes to the tight ends. But if they're part of the pass protection or run blocking surface, like are they targeting runs effectively? Are there combinations to those targets good? And is everybody on the same page? And obviously that's kind of high level. And then are they winning their physical one-on-one or double team matchup? And that's kind of what you're looking at for when you're looking at offensive linemen, I think.
Yeah, this we should probably talk about in depth as camp goes. But the only thing I'll add is like, what are they actually running? So like zone versus gap scheme runs, like we don't know what this offense fully is going to be yet, and I don't know that it's going to be totally given away in the preseason, obviously. But I think it's worth mentioning that eventually, like the line is going to tell us something. So that's the only thing that I'll add. But that's a larger conversation for later. Position battle to watch. This one's pretty easy. Left tackle. It's Trent Scott. It's Brandon Coleman. It is Cornelius Lucas. Those are the three names in the mix here, Logan. How do you expect them to approach the position battle of it all?
Yeah, I mean, left tackle is going to be really interesting to watch, obviously, because like right now, I think Cornelius Lucas is the best pass protector of the group. But I do think like what is this offense going to look like? I think one of the things coming out of OTAs, we didn't get a great feel for, we didn't get a great feel for what the down to down offense looks like. We got a good feel for kind of the 7-on-7, the hurry up, the 2-minute, but like we don't really know what kind of runs they're going to be running. Like maybe Trent Scott's more fitting for the runs and they can kind of game plan around him as a pass protector. Or Brandon Coleman, you see that athleticism and the length come together in the right way. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic that can happen, but again, in the mini camps, it was, he's got a little bit of work to do, and he's only been playing football for 4 years, so there's a little bit of a developmental period there. So it's hard to say because I think everyone kind of has their role, and I think it is very dependent on the scheme. Obviously, Coleman's different because if he develops really quickly, then he becomes the guy. But I think those other two guys, it really is more dependent on the vision they have for the position itself, if that makes sense. And I think the other thing to point out with the offensive line, I think the left guard spot's up. I think the swing guard spot's up. I think the swing tackle spot's up. I think that offensive line is maybe one of the more interesting positions for throughout the camp. You know what I'm saying? In terms of like how the chips ultimately settle. So like if you're watching matchups, like they got to pick 9 guys. Right now there's like 15 of them on the roster. So they have to make a big cut there. And I think the other thing is like new offensive line coach, new offensive coordinator, all these names that the fans are familiar with, there's not this loyalty to them in the same way that there was before. So this is really interesting. Maybe the most significant position for the offense as a whole going into the season. I know people want to talk about quarterback, but if this doesn't come together the right way, this could be really, really tough to work around. So in terms of focus, I think the fans should be really looking at this because, again, left tackle, we highlighted and why that's important. Everyone knows why the left tackle is important, but then it's across the board as well, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, you have to decide, but then you have to like get ready for the season. This is the constant battle of training camp for coaches is, okay, if we have position battles, we have to give guys a chance to like fight it out. Like we don't want to limit the reps. We don't want to give guys a chance to grow. We want to give them a chance to like really show what they can do. But eventually we have to pick our guys so that they can get ready for the season as a number one group. And in a position like offensive line, like you're going to have to make some changes. You're not going to start the same 5 guys for 17 weeks. But at the same time, like you want to prepare as if that's the case. You want to have your best chance out there with your best group. So they do have to make this decision within the first, let's say 3 weeks or so, 2.5 weeks of camp, and then hopefully get a couple of weeks of practice in where they're able to have a true one group that gets to coalesce and build some chemistry, et cetera, et cetera. Which leads us to, Logan, final O-line question, confidence level in the offensive line, that this is all going to work out in the end.
4-ish. 4. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces here. And again, like I think I'm probably more confident in Wiley than a lot of people. I'm very confident in Cosme. Biotish is obviously, his track record in Dallas is very good. Maybe one of the better centers in the league, like we talked about with our rankings. But to me, there's like half your offensive line is over half is going to be new, and like that's always tough. And so again, like, that's why coaches get paid. That's why offensive coordinators get paid to make sure these guys come together and you get the right group working as one. But there's still so many questions. And again, like, they can be answered, and the joint practices are going to be really helpful for that. But just a lot of unknowns at the moment with that, which again is one of the things that makes me a little bit nervous. And I have a very high confidence in Cornelius Lucas as a good player. Trent Scott played well when he had his opportunity, but they just don't have that tremendous pedigree. But if Cliff thinks he can work around it, or Brandon Coleman develops, like, more power to you. But there's a lot of things that still remain to be seen, and a lot of gelling that needs to happen, which makes it a little bit up in the air, I think.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think I'm at like a 4 or 5.
Because 4 or 5.
I guess the one thing that I have more confidence in than last year is, and I have confidence this going into the year, but fool me once, fool me twice, whatever, maybe I'm a fool, is the play calling. Sure. Like, I do think that Dan, from a head coaching standpoint, and then on down to Cliff and that staff, realizes we have a young quarterback, we have an incredibly talented quarterback, but we need to make sure we put him in position to succeed. We have certain weaknesses. Adam is a realist about this roster, I think, as well. So he's probably being like, hey, guys, don't forget, we haven't fixed the O-line yet. This is year 1 of the rebuild. Like, there is a realism versus this like blind optimism that last year's group seemed to have, that everything would just work out and maybe the players were a little bit better than they thought. And so I think that that realness that they have about who they are can translate to better play calling and better scheme to protect whatever it needs to be protected. Whether it's, let's say Trent Scott does win the job at left tackle, you do scheme up to protect him as a pass protector. If Cornelius Lucas wins the job, they're not going to run a bunch of outside stuff that makes Cornelius Lucas run, because they know they can't do it. Right. And so I think that the realness about where they are will lead to a better plan, which is why I'm willing to go to a 5. But from a talent level, there still is certainly, like, this is the next big area for them to attack next offseason. This is what happens in a multi-year rebuild. You can't do it all at once. And so I'm realistic about that as well.